is time to celebrate a little bit of Bruno Sammartino. Yes, 2018 is when Bruno Sammartino passed away, unfortunately, and I have a story about that. This is Dominic DeAngelo, by the way. Thank you to RVD for allowing me to use the X account, as well as I'm live on my X account at Dominic DeAngelo, and happy to be here live with all of you to talk a little bit of Bruno, share some memories and some stories that I've heard, and stories that are really, really great, and just what I really like about Bruno Sammartino. And so, yes, but thanks everybody for tuning in live here. If you have a story to share, be sure to drop it down in the chat or wherever you might be, whether you're on brassringmedia.com. If you're on brassringmedia.com, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Help support the show and get the word out. A little bit of housekeeping, I guess, before I start. A new episode of One of a Kind with RVD is up now. Me and Rob, we go into full detail about a whole bunch of different stuff, from like stand-up comedy, that big comedy festival that went down in Saudi Arabia. Rob gives his thoughts on that. We talk about Joey Janela. We talk about what's another big topic here? Oh, the pivotal moment between him and Paul Heyman in ECW. Really, really interesting story that Rob shares there. And then we take a whole bunch of fan questions. It's a great show. I love doing it every week, and I love talking pro wrestling, and especially love talking about Bruno. So I got to meet Bruno only once. Now, I did get to go to his Hall of Fame induction in New York City. Well, not the ceremony, but just the WrestleMania. So I was at WrestleMania 29, where he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so that was really neat to kind of experience that. But then I met him, when was it? 2009. So about, what is it? Horrible math. 4 years beforehand, he was in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh here, the Greensburg Mall. And me and my degenerate brother Marcus went and got to meet Bruno for the first time and the only time. It was great. He was with Dominic DeAngelo, and they were signing. And so I told him the story how my great-grandfather used to watch him on television. And he was like, "Your great-grandfather?" He's like, "Man, you make me feel old." And it was pretty neat, because I would always hear stories like about, my great-grandfather watching him, yelling at the TV screen in Italian, because he spoke broken English and stuff like that. So, but he loved Bruno. And so Bruno's always been a part, like a lot of wrestling families in Pittsburgh and in the greater Northeast area. Bruno's been a big part of their wrestling history. And I mean, obviously in WWE history too. Without Bruno, there would be no WWE. You have somebody that was so relatable to all the ethnicities that were in the area and that people could get behind. Bruno was the man. Selling out Madison Square Garden how many times, you can only think about. And this is before wrestling went global or nationwide. So to stay on top for that long and that hot, just amazing. Like 8 years as your world heavyweight champion, that's a record that will not be broken. If you could fathom somebody holding that title for 8 years, not in today's immediate world that people want, it's a different kind of story going on here in today's world. So let alone Bruno held it for 12 years in total, because he held it for another 4 years after that fact. But I guess I'll share the story too, where I just started in the dirt sheet business in 2018. My first paid gig was at WrestleZone, and it was at the beginning of April. So like I was going back from WrestleMania in New Orleans, and that's when I got an email from Nick Houseman, who said, "Hey, do you want to do, like, are you interested in having like a little paid gig here and stuff?" Because I used to just contribute with ROH. I'd write ROH recaps and stuff, and just to kind of get my name out there a little bit. And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. So boom, I'm like maybe 2 weeks into the job, doing it. And I start my morning. I'm in Bloomfield, which is Little Italy of Pittsburgh, which is where Bruno would come in, like for Little Italy days. He would come and play bocce there, and he would sometimes come to the area. I think back in the day too. Um, but so I'm right in the heart of Pittsburgh, basically. And what hits my news? But Bruno Sammartino passes away, and man, the air was taken out of my lungs. So I think he was, yeah, because it was 2018, right? 2018. So he would have passed at what? Is it 80, 83? He was 83 years old. Is that right? But I wrote about it. It was, I mean, like I just wrote it up real quick. Bruno Sammartino passes away, and man, just a bummer. It felt like, really, it almost felt like losing a family member, because Bruno was just a part of, my pro wrestling fandom. I didn't grow up watching him. Didn't really have access to a lot of the matches that he had, aside from like ones that were on Ferragi's home video in Ridgeway, PA. There was a match where I loved it. He fought Randy Savage, my goodness, in a cage match with Tito Santana. Wait, I think I'm messing that up. Maybe I'm not. I think he was in a tag match. Randy Savage tagged with Adrian Adonis, I believe. And it was Bruno teaming up with Tito Santana. I think that was it. Yeah. I think it was in a cage. And then there was the other one was Piper in a steel cage. I got to see Piper in a steel cage. And then Bruno, like his little bit that he had at WrestleMania 2 where he wrestled in that Battle Royal, which was neat. So that was really the only stuff I got to watch of Bruno as a kid. But either way, like, man, such a sad thing to write about, but like I felt honored to be able to write about him, like just like that. It really starting things off and everything, but yeah, it's the amazing kind of person that he was. He was the heart of Pittsburgh. So it was, it was a gut shot to everybody in the city, and particularly like I would hear just casual fans that did grow up watching and being like, oh man, just being bummed about Bruno. And so that was how I started, basically. That was the first big news story I ever wrote about in pro wrestling, was Bruno passing away. Some other things I wanted to share. Let me see here. I might read a little bit of the article that I wrote actually about Bruno here. Let's see if I can find it. Bruno Sammartino. Let's see if this pops up here. Here it is. So I wrote this. I republished it. Yeah, I republished it back in 2023 on Wrestling Writing. WrestlingWriting.substack.com is my blog that I write for pro wrestling, kind of updates, quotes, transcriptions, some news, stuff like that. Really, feature pieces is my big thing that I do. So yes, Bruno passed away April 18th. So this is what I wrote. In a business birthed on carnival grounds and built in the concept of separating the consumer from their hard-earned coin with a fixed finish, it can be difficult to find someone genuine. After all, con artistry breeds intriguing characters, and professional wrestling certainly isn't lacking in the realm of eccentrics and oddballs. That's what makes this business so fascinating, and honestly, a great reason as to why I love it so much. But there was also Bruno Sammartino. Like Luthez before him, Bruno gave the world of professional wrestling an injection of credibility, but he added an authentic sense of relatability to the working class. While Thez established himself as the suit and tie pro who took his craft seriously, Bruno did the same, but with a roll up your sleeves and get to work mantra that was applicable to every race, creed, and color. The Italian Superman was larger than life, but also personified life for any group that found themselves struggling to cut their own swath into the stars and stripes that symbolized the American dream. No reference to Dusty Rhodes. I was busy doing morning coverage, for WrestleZone.com in Bloomfield when the news broke of Bruno's passing on Wednesday, and besides losing my breath, a lot of thoughts circulated throughout my mind. One being the story of my great-grandfather, whom I never met, Used to watch him on television and curse in Italian at any villain who would do Bruno wrong. Another was going through the sadness of losing a role model. Another was how he was taken too soon. The man was 82 years old, and I still thought that. With as great of shape as Bruno kept himself in, I took for granted thinking that he had at least 10 more revolutions around the sun. And me, being the non-native Italian in Pittsburgh's Little Italy, I thought how embedded Bruno was in the fabric of this neighborhood. Despite him growing up in South Oakland, I hear tales of the local bocce players hosting parties at Pleasure Bar with Bruno as a guest of honor. My landlord, whom I live right above, has an autographed picture of Bruno hanging in her office. And as I was ready to leave the cafe I was writing at, I saw two elderly regulars sharing a smartphone to watch the news package on his passing. The world of professional wrestling heart was broken, but so was Bloomfield, and so was Pittsburgh. After doing 4 hours of coverage on such a close-to-home topic, it took me a while to wrap my head around what I wanted to write regarding Bruno, and it came down to this. Bruno Sammartino defined what was it like to truly be an American in his childhood, in his adulthood, and in his career as the top wrestling act in the United States. Bruno cut his own swath in the middle of part of the 20th century, and there's no reason to think that he didn't lay a brick down for all of us to do the same in this century, no matter race, creed, or color. Just be genuine. So there we go. That's what I wrote. After the fact, I wrote a little feature piece. Such a sad thing to, when somebody passes and everything to that light, but it felt nice to be able to cover him in that regard. So another story I wanted to share, which, this is one of the best Bruno stories of all time, and it involves him in the Iron Sheik. Let's see if I can pop this up real quick. Bruno Sammartino, Iron Sheik. Hopefully this pops up. I'm going to type this into, but this is a great tale. Trying to see here. I hope I can find it, because it's a good story. Iron Sheik. Dang it. I should have looked this up beforehand. Oh, no wonder it's not on SE Scoops. It's on Wrestling Inc. When I wrote for Wrestling Inc. Okay. So this is a great story. Get ready for it. Are you ready for some football? Bruno Sammartino was back in his later days with WWE. The Italian Superman once battled an orangutan, that is true, in his pre-wrestling days, but in his post-wrestling days, the rumor was that he fought off 6 football players with another legend of the squared circle. In an interview conducted over 10 years ago, the late Hall of Famer clarified that he actually fought 1 football player and 5 of his compadres. So this is what Bruno had to say. He was a running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then he went on to Canadian League after the Steelers cut him, Sammartino said. The player in question was Dave Rooster Fleming, and he had something he wanted to prove to the 2-time WWE champion. Sammartino was a commentator for the company at the time when he was backstage and heard his name called. He walked over in his natural baby's face demeanor. At this time, I'm like 51, 52 years old when this went on. Isn't that wild to think, by the way? You think about Sting, you think about Undertaker, Stone Cold. Stone Cold maybe the most, well, no, even Stone Cold's older. Everybody's older than Bruno at this point. Like when they step back in the ring, Austin was older than Bruno at this time when he was in a commentator role. But Bruno, he just looked like this older guy that was like still built, but like he looked, like your grandpa in certain ways. But he said, at the time, I'm like 51, 52 when this went on. I said, hey, hi, guys. What are you doing here? I said, if security sees you, you might get in trouble. You're not supposed to be back here, Sammartino said. Fleming made certain it was indeed the living legend before offering his hand in what Sammartino thought to be a friendly handshake. It wasn't, as Fleming started to squeeze. I said, well, what do you think you're doing? And he said to me, you're nothing but a washed-up old man. And I responded, well, not too washed up to take care of you. And the fight was on. So here we go. Fleming was the first to initiate the fisticuffs. He took a swing at me. I blocked it, and I nailed him. And he went down, and the others joined. So I'm fighting all of them, Sammartino said, but made note that he could only be for so long, considering a man his age was fending off 6 other men. Thankfully, he was about to get help from one of wrestling's most famous heels in the Iron Sheik. The Sheik happened to be taking a shower after his match, and he heard all the commotion. And when he came out to the shower, He saw me just fighting these guys, Sammartino recalled. He came right out and joined next to me, and no bragging, but then the two of us kind of cleaned house over there. And from the way it sounded, the Sheik was naked as the day he was born, as he helped the living legend fight off Fleming and his 5 other cronies. That's a true story, and he was the only guy who came to help me. How about that? Considering that Sammartino was arguably the biggest babyface in pro wrestling during his prime, and Sheik was an absolute heel, it certainly was an unlikely alliance made for behind the curtain. Sheik and Sammartino couldn't have been far off from being on opposing sides of the ring. However, because around that time, Sammartino battled Nikolai Volkov on an episode of Wrestling Challenge with the Sheik in the Russian's corner. So how about that? What a great story. So could you imagine that? The Sheik, Bruno's 50-something, fighting off 6 guys, and then in comes Iron Sheik naked as the day. Helping him out. Bubba. Good stuff. Something that my favorite Bruno moment, at least for me, and I like I said, I haven't really seriously gone back and watched too many of Bruno's matches over the course of I just liked Bruno. But so I'd imagine I would love, like, if I got invested to tune into the whole Larry Zbyszko storyline, some of the feuds with some of the other people that he worked with, like Spiros Agnew, and I'm trying to think who else. My dad always talked about Professor Tanaka. I'm sure learning that Gorilla Monsoon was his first big opponent after he beat Buddy Rogers for the title. That's another great story, is like Bruno almost having to shoot on Buddy Rogers. Or shooting on Buddy Rogers to make sure he didn't get up. That's a good story. But facing Gorilla Monsoon as his first world title challenger. And so that's pretty neat to know. I really do appreciate too how Triple H was able to get him back into the mix, into the fold. And it's neat to see Bruno get the respect that he deserves and earned. He's in the new WWE intro, which is awesome, and just a super, super cool thing. My favorite moment for Bruno, though, I love the Piper's Pit with him and Bruno and Roddy Piper and Bob Orton Jr. Piper and Bruno just have 2 chairs in the ring. And Piper sits down, and man, he says some wild stuff to Bruno, and it's great. It's Piper's just being this obnoxious heel, something that he was so good at during those days, and just really trying to condescend and talk down to Bruno. And he sure does it by saying, using ethnic slurs at Bruno, in Italian ethnic slurs. And it's great. It's so awesome because it's just like you could not get away with saying some of the stuff that he said, like garlic behind the ears. I think his oil or something like that too. Greasy, I think he called him. But then Bruno gets really ticked off and he starts laying into Piper. It's great. It's a great confrontation. And then Piper and Bob Orton get the better of Bruno, gang up on him. And you can see Piper mother effing him as he's like stomping away at him. It's awesome. What an awesome feud. As a kid, too, it was really neat because, Roddy Piper was somebody that was big star, like, for me as a kid. And so seeing him get to mix up with a legend like Bruno that, like, my dad liked and my great-grandfather liked, I was like, wow, these worlds are colliding and it's awesome. And the same goes for the Randy Savage later on, too. I also think it's very neat that later on in Bruno's life, he did some stuff with ROH, Ring of Honor. And I just think that's awesome and amazing. I'm certainly not a historian when it comes to Bruno or that era or anything like that. And I'm sure there's so many more stories that I'm missing out on. But man, it just what he meant to me as a fan. He's on my Mount Rushmore, no doubt about it. It's him on my Mount Rushmore, Scott Hall, Dusty Rhodes, and The Rock. Those are my 4 Mount Rushmore wrestlers because they influenced me, my fandom, in so many ways. And Bruno is a big part of that. Shout out to Deja Vu. Will Bruno be on? He will not be on later, unfortunately. He will not. Something else that I should mention is that Sam Adonis, brother of Corey Graves, and their dad put on a Bruno Forever tribute show earlier this year. And it was awesome. Like they had the Bruno Sammartino Championship. Victor Benjamin became the inaugural champion for that. And then it was really, really cool stuff. Shane Douglas was there. Stan Hansen was there. Trying to think, there's a couple other names, but a lot of Pittsburgh locals, and they're sharing stories and everything, talking about, what Bruno meant to the city of Pittsburgh, what Bruno meant to them. So it was such a cool event, and they're doing another one coming up this year too. So, or in 2026. So, got to give a shout out to Sam Adonis and his father for doing what could have been done. And it was great. Another good story that probably has never been told, because a friend of mine told me about this story with Bruno. So I can't remember what church it was that they went to, what mass it was, but I believe it was her mother. No, I think it was her grandmother. I'll have to get clarity on this after the fact. But Bruno accidentally took their seat, Bruno's family, at mass, and the lady was not having it. And so she told them to move, and I think they moved. I think somebody's like, "Do you know that was Bruno?" And she's like, "I don't care. I can't remember." But that's another good story about Bruno. But so cool. I think, who is the next Bruno? Is there going to be a kind of a next Bruno? You kind of get some of that in a way, I guess, with I don't know. You need a working class kind of guy that and like the ultimate kind of babyface. Cody kind of has some of that, I think. Cody certainly has some of that, I think. But I mean, I think a character like Bruno will always resonate with people. It's the everyman, but at the same time, he's still larger than life. I think pro wrestling is due for a Bruno-like character and persona. Not that anybody can replicate what Bruno can do, but it'd be their own Bruno. I'm just trying to think of some names that could really, really do that for people in today's world. It's tough. It's tough to make that thing. I think Cody's the closest. But man, I love Bruno, and I just wanted to take some time here to talk about him a little bit on his 90th birthday. What would have been his 90th birthday? So as far as anything else goes, what else did I want to share? Anything else? No. I have the LJN rubber figure back there. That's with Dusty. There's this great picture of him and Dusty here. Him and Dusty Rhodes right here, trying to avoid the glare. But it blew my mind when I saw this photo. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So, man, yes, really like Bruno. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to the city of Pittsburgh. So I hope you enjoyed this. Just wanted to share some stories. Figured I'd go live and talk about it. If I got some interaction, If I didn't. I just wanted to talk about Bruno. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in, whether you tuned in live or you're tuning in later on. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, brassringmedia.com. Help get the word out. And thank you all for just tuning in and enjoying some Bruno. Hope you're enjoying some Monday Night Raw, too, at this moment in time. But I'll see you next time here on brassringmedia.com. Bruno is Uno.